Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
You know what everybody has been talking about this week, guys?
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about it this week. And we actually even had a different topic arranged for the show and then wanted to leap in and join the discussion because we were so inspired.
It's happening.
What I'm happy about is, after 80 years, people are talking about Amelia Earhart. I mean, it's amazing that there's so much discussion around this newest documentary, that Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence, that aired on a History Channel just this week. Yeah,
and it was obviously very exciting because they said they had a lot, and it's been going on for like a couple of weeks. So the pre-show was that they started showing this picture that said that you could see Amelia Earhart and her navigator. What was her navigator's name?
Fred Noonan.
Fred Noonan, that's right. Noonan makes me think of the actor Tom Noonan, who's like this really tall guy that always plays like a killer. And so every time I heard the name Fred Noonan in the documentary, I just kept thinking about Tom Noonan, like about to murder someone. Like he's always behind Amelia Earhart with a knife or something like that. Anyway, so the picture claims that they are on a dock in the Marshall Islands in 1937. So let's give everybody, if you don't know anything about Amelia Earhart, let's say you're a millennial and don't know anything about Amelia Earhart.
Now's your time to learn.
Yes. And I'm just kidding, millennials, I love you. Well, without them, we wouldn't have the craft beer thing.
And
that's
Mike,
great
what?
revolution.
Are we all millennials, Mike? Sure we are.
That's right.
Sure.
Anyway.
We fake it well.
So if you are unfamiliar with Amelia Earhart, here's just a quick thing about her. She was a pioneer in female aviation. I mean, I'm mansplaining this to the girls.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So not a pioneer in female aviation, just a pioneer in aviation, really.
Yeah. There you go. And so back when planes were just people were still getting excited about it and stuff like that. Amelia Earhart was not. I mean, she was going across the Atlantic. She was the first female to fly across the Atlantic, right?
Yep.
Correct.
And then she had a thing where she was going to be the first pilot, period, to circumnavigate the globe.
Right.
Okay, and this was in 1937 she was going to do it. She was 39.
Was bold. I'm sorry, go ahead.
She was old?
Yes, she was bold.
Oh, bold. I thought you said she was old.
I thought that too.
No, bold,
So her and Tom Noonan are...
Fortune favors the bold. Sorry.
Fortune does favor the bold. So it's her and Tom Noonan, and they're in the plane, and they've already made it over most of the planet. They land in New Guinea, and that's where the last place they take off. That's the last place they were seen by other people alive. At least that's the last place we're assured that she was seen alive.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's footage of her leaving New Guinea. Like somebody took out one of those old cameras where they're obviously probably cranking it themselves and stuff. Because you see the footage in the documentary in Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence. And it looks, it looks
cool
like
to have it though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like who was the like videographer? Who was the cinematographer in New Guinea? Who's like, I gotta get a shot of this.
I don't know.
Maybe newsreel could be newsreel footage.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, things
probably.
like Amelia Earhart leaves New Guinea on the last 7,000 miles.
Yeah, because they only.
You took me there, Mike. You really did.
Thank you. Okay, so it's Amelia Earhart and Tom Noonan, and then they just never seen again.
Tom Noonan.
That's the story. That's the story as we know it.
So they're never seen again, and this becomes this great mystery. What happened to Amelia Earhart? And that's what people wonder. I mean, did they go down in the drink? Mm-hmm. Did they go on some deserted island and just live a life like Gilligan's Island for the rest of their days?
Like Castaways. There's another researcher who talks about that. But the team that was working on The Lost Evidence feels that they have the most documentation to really support their hypothesis.
And their hypothesis is that Amelia Earhart crash landed in the Marshall Islands.
That's right.
And then
survived.
was captured.
Survived.
Right. So they survived.
Yep.
And then was captured by the Japanese.
That's right.
And eventually executed by the Japanese.
Yeah, taken to the island of Saipan, imprisoned, and then later executed and buried there on Saipan.
Yeah, so it's not really much of that kind of South Pacific vacation that we all dream about.
Yeah, it's not that feel-good story where Amelia and Fred, crash
they eventually
land,
fall in love.
Like the Blue Lagoon, except older.
Yeah.
But it's okay, we can still run with that.
Yeah.
But they when they left, it was overcast and cloudy, and so there were, theories that was part of the problem, right?
Yeah, the weather is always part of the problem.
They thought the radio antenna might have been damaged and things like that. So
especially in those early days of flight.
Right, but then they never found anything.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's why we're still wondering what happened to her even 80 years later.
Well, I don't buy the coconut theory. I don't buy the castaways theory because they'd have help. We'd see this from satellites. You would see a huge thing of help written in coconuts at the beach somewhere.
Well, actually, I did interview one of the principal researchers who was featured in Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence. His name is Richard Spink. He did talk about that castaway theory in the interview and talks about why he thinks that's implausible. I mean, that's my favorite theory. I mean, I hate to think of, Fred being beheaded and, who knows what happened to Amelia, but she ends up dead too. And, that's just not, you hate to think of, those adventurers going out in that way.
Well, you think about this, though. Like, of course, the Japanese are going to think they're spies because they got a plane, they got a camera, they're Americans, so they're a foreign power. And maybe I'm thinking of it because I just watched Bridge of Spies last week, the Tom Hanks movie about the U-2 plane in the Cold War, and that's all about spy planes. And so, there were hostile. I mean, Japan was already involved in World War II because they were at war with China at the time. So they were already in the middle of the war, and the U.S. was obviously encroaching in the Pacific because we had the base on Pearl Harbor. And we'll talk about all that kind of stuff in a little while after your interview with Dick Spink, who is one of the researchers. And National Geographic even did a really fascinating article on Dick called "One Man's Dogged Search for Amelia Earhart," and the bylines like "Teacher has spent $50,000 trying to prove the aviator didn't crash into the Pacific and instead landed on a tiny island." So we're going to get to that interview, but so I can see why the Japanese would think she was a spy.
Right.
Because she had all the equipment to be a spy. And what do you do with spies?
Right. And also, she didn't have the look of a typical female of that time. She wore pants a lot and they refer to her as a tomboy. So I could see where that might also give them an impression of like she's trying to be, disguised or something like that.
Yeah. Or that she's a threat.
Right.
Yes. She's like Vasquez in Aliens, where you kind of, you're kind of intimidated by her. And also, when you think about the traditional Japanese society,
right,
and the role of women, yes,
right, it's not a very. I mean, even in today's society, I would say that the role of women is not as equal.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that in the U.S. we're all, we're not that much better, but. It just kind of makes you think. So the Japanese don't know what to do with her. And so what happens when you don't know what to do with somebody? You kill them.
You just get them out of the way.
Well, I think that was the most compelling part of the special. It wasn't just that, like when they did the radio thing, because they were trying to see if a radio signal from the Marshall Islands could reach like Tennessee. Or what? I mean, there was a woman who'd heard the broadcast. She said she had heard Amelia Earhart, in like on her radio.
She picked up the signal of her.
Shortwave. She was a shortwave operator. But there were other people that claimed to have picked it up in Canada as well. There were people who have claimed to hear signals from Amelia or hear transmissions.
Yeah, so that whole thing, I was like, oh, I hadn't heard that before. So people
Right.
had claimed to hear signals.
And it wasn't just that, it was that the signal she heard identified her at that island.
Ah, that's right.
So she heard her say, like, I don't know, landing in whatever the name of the island was.
Jaluit.
Well,
It was a two-name island.
Yeah, so she was in the Marshall Island chain, and it seems like a lot of points of evidence are coming together to point towards the Marshall Islands. Amelia Atoll was the place where...
That's it.
There you go.
Yeah, Amelia Atoll was the island in the Marshall Island chain where she is said to have crashed. That's the hypothesis.
Right.
And so the presenters, the researchers, had multiple pieces of evidence that seemed to line up and point to Amelia Atoll as, the most likely place for the crash to have occurred.
But what I thought was the smoking gun was probably all the people who had said they'd seen Amelia Earhart over the years.
Right, the eyewitness reports, we cannot discount that. I know that's anecdotal evidence, but that's where things start. And our court system is built on eyewitness accounts. So to think of all these people in the Marshall Islands who had memory, I mean, a lot of these people are dying now, because they're elders. This was 80 years ago. But the fact that so many people there have this knowledge that, yes, Amelia Earhart crashed here, or that this woman and man crashed here, Caucasians taken away by the Japanese. The woman, she didn't dress like a woman. She had short hair. So a lot of people recognized that something strange was happening, but didn't know that it was Amelia Earhart. But their accounts very closely, just, exactly, I would say, match the description.
Yeah, and they also matched each other's, a lot of them, where they said some of them even thought she was a man, but they heard the soldiers and people the buzz about a female flyer or female pilot.
Yeah, that was the one woman who still is alive that said she saw her. So that there's one woman who lives in Los Angeles, and she's still alive. San Francisco, right, Californians. And she remembers seeing her. So that was like, there's one eyewitness. What I did think was kind of BS, though, was when, so who's the guy that, was it Sean?
Sean Henry.
Sean Henry.
Sean Henry was the
former assistant director of the FBI.
And he looks just like Uncle Hank from Breaking Bad.
He does. Well, what I thought was funny, though, was like they kept showing that picture of him with the attorney general. They kept on saying, like, just in case you forget that this guy was in the FBI, and here's him with the attorney general of the United States, just for extra, to make sure that you believe this guy. It's not just like some History Channel dude,
right?
Like Giorgio with the crazy hair. Like
it's
when he comes,
established credibility.
It is, but I have to say that he did have pretty good TV presence, which made me suspicious.
Right?
Because it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. I think what is needed here is a point by point through the evidence. And that's not really what you get from TV, which is
True.
A visual medium, stupidly visual, in that people maybe need to see that picture of Sean Henry with the Attorney General. And they need to have somebody with that TV presence.
Well, right. If somebody's stuttering the whole time, it's not going to be very compelling television. Nobody's going to like Amelia.
Right, but the problem is, where's the substance? We need substance, and flash over substance is what we're seeing right now with the current controversy.
This has no bearing on anything either, except that, like I said, I was suspicious because I'm like, why does this guy seem like an actor or some kind of a personality? When he's supposed to be the FBI guy, he's supposed to be like, so I was thinking perhaps if the show had been formatted differently, like with an actual host interviewing Sean, you know what I mean? Although I guess he was the one leading the investigation, but it felt like so many times he was turning the camera and kind of winking like, now this is good, guys.
Right. So it had that contrived feeling.
Yeah.
But I think it was good that they were getting the testimony, but then he's like, here's why he believes them. And that's what what
right.
got me, because he's like,
me too.
Well, she's looking off into the distance like she sees it in her memory. And you'll notice that happens when a lot of people tell the truth. They'll look in the distance as if they're trying to see it, and they see the memory. And I'm like, Okay, like I don't need to hear that kind of stuff.
I think he was trying to talk about, interviewing witnesses and what witnesses typically do when recounting something. Okay. So when people analyze, when people in law enforcement are analyzing people giving testimony, they do look for visual signs that you're lying.
Sure.
Foretells.
That's true.
Foretells. And so I think that's what he was trying to express there.
But he also, anytime the other guy said, I don't know, he's like, the fact that he said, I don't know, shows that he's being honest. It's just, it seemed like every time it was compelling toward his side of the argument.
Yeah.
It was like a textbook for how you lie to the police.
Yeah.
Like now I know. Next time I get pulled over, it's like, you know how fast you were going? I don't know. And I'll look off into the distance and be like,
pretend you're elsewhere.
55, 60 miles an hour. But no, that kind of stuff was a little too much. But I did enjoy actually getting to see the people who had claimed that, because that to me, it becomes more than like the oral tradition, because that's the thing in in a place like the Marshall Islands and a lot of these South Pacific places too, is that the tradition of oral history to them is just as important. Like we believe things that are written in history books, and they have a long tradition of oral history. And I think that was something cool to see as well, in that the tale of Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan landing on the island is now part of the Marshall Islands, like the oral history, the history when they tell people of the 20th century.
And in spite of the fact that it was kind of cheesy whenever he would make those little statements about the credibility of the storytellers, I agree with you that the people recounting their stories from their parents and things that they saw was the most compelling part of the actual documentary.
Yeah, that these are real people and this tragedy impacted their lives.
And they seemed believable.
Right. And the thing is, you have to understand what it was like for them at the time. You have to keep that in perspective as well, that they were in a time of fear, a time when their islands were being occupied by the Japanese. And these are Chamorro people that live there, and we know someone who's Chamorro, don't we, Mike?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
My godmother is from Guam, and she's Chamorro, and she has told us about when the Japanese occupied Guam. So it was a very fearful time. And if you know how memory works, memory really kicks in when you are afraid, when you are frightened. So the memories of these people are perhaps even more credible because of that Japanese occupation, and because the Japanese soldiers were raiding homes for food and resources. And so, people, as like happened in Guam, were in a scary state of mind at that time.
Well, the thing is, though, to play devil's advocate to that, though, that is how fear does, increase the sharpness of memory, but at the same time, it also makes you more susceptible to like a memory being planted.
Suggestions?
I'm not. That memory being planted sounds like some kind of science fiction thing.
Right,
I think Wendy said it is suggested. So, I mean, that 90-year-old woman, she could have been told by somebody that, if this is part of the history of the Marshall Islands now, like you were saying, they featured Amelia Earhart on a stamp.
Right.
So has she been suggested to that, hey, we saw some white woman down there and it looks like the Japanese, had taken her. That to her, now she remembers seeing the woman. Now, that's not how it played out, but I'm just saying, playing devil's advocate that, we even had an episode about how memories, while you were saying that the legal system runs on memories.
Yeah.
Memories also can be very misleading, and suggestions can lead to people remembering things that never happened, and then also people with the whole satanic ritual abuse and things like that. It's happening. The same kind of things happening now.
Yeah, the memories are a bit of a sticky wicket. I mean, if you are in a state of fear, chances are you're gonna remember what happened because it's just basic survival. You want to be able to use that information in the future to keep yourself from harm. So something of novelty that comes about in a time of fear is also something that would be remembered. Anything of novelty. So were the people in the Marshall Islands thinking about Amelia Earhart? I don't think so. I think most of them didn't know who she was. But
right.
For a Caucasian woman to show up and to be dressed as a man with short hair, to be a female flyer, I mean, those things would really stick out. And that's what we saw in the documentary. These people that were interviewed really noticed because of that, and because these people crashed on the island and then were taken away as prisoners by the Japanese. And that's actually what's featured in the stamp. And the fact that they knew the boat that took them away, too, the Koshu. It's not like some boat. It's like, no, we know the boat. It was called the Koshu. Come on. I mean, those are some real compelling specifics there. But what I want to talk about here is, I think a lot of the things, the eyewitness testimony, the different paperwork that they found regarding transmissions that people received, all those documents that they were able to bring forward. Okay, that's dull in TV land, but that's what I think people need to rewatch the documentary and focus on. But that's not what's being focused on. Not the eyewitness accounts, not the historical documentation, not the fact that there are interviews with Marines who said that they were sent to Saipan, where supposedly Noonan and Earhart were taken away to and died and were buried on Saipan. These Marines were sent to Saipan to recover the bodies of Fred Noonan and Amelia Earhart. Why would they lie, is my question. So all of these things really pile up and point to this hypothesis as possibly being valid. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying the evidence seemed pretty compelling. But right now, all anybody seems to remember is that photo, which purportedly shows Fred Noonan and Amelia Earhart on a dock in the Marshall Islands.
Off in the distance.
Yeah, and really the photo, this is the other part of the documentary that didn't really jive with me too, because you're sitting there and they're taking like this Photoshop analysis of the photo. They're looking at it, and the guy's like looking at specific kind of things, and he's like, well, it kind of looks like Amelia Earhart's back, and trying to prove that this is Amelia Earhart. And really, when you look at the photo, it is hard to see.
Yeah. Even with the big thing, the guy's hairline was what they compared, which, I mean, that's not...
Yeah. It was the flimsiest part of the evidence. Why are we stuck on it? Because why is that the only thing people remember?
Well, I think the idea is that a photo is not something you can easily disprove. Especially a photo from the 1930s, because that's not like a modern photo where somebody put up a picture of the Slender Man in a 4chan forum. This is something that is from the National Archives from before people were messing with photos. And we had access to this, special. Anybody can create a special effect of a UFO in the sky or a ghost in the background, and this is before they could do that. So that would be then the smoking gun. But the problem is this smoking gun is such a soft piece of evidence because it does look.
It's a gimmick. Let's just say that it's one of those gee whiz gimmicks that people put in TV shows, to draw people in and get them to watch.
But the thing is here, though, that it worked for the pre-show in that it got everybody excited to watch the show.
Talking about it.
The thing is, 4.32 million people watched it live.
Wow.
It was the biggest show on cable all week. It beat out Fear the Walking Dead. It beat out every other show on cable. 4.32 million viewers for a basic cable show is a huge number. And so there was going to be some kind of impact there, because it was the biggest show of the weekend, was what everybody was talking about. Now, what happens immediately after? So like 2 days after the thing comes up, is there's a Japanese blogger, and he's somebody that opposes the idea that Amelia Earhart was executed by the Japanese, because it just doesn't make you look good.
Yeah, it doesn't make the Japanese look good. It's not good for PR.
Right, and so he goes in, says that in a 30-minute Google search, he finds this picture in the Japanese National Library from a 1935 travel log of the Marshall Islands.
Now, what does that remind you of, that quick debunking? Does that remind anybody of anything?
Well, the Roswell slides.
It
totally.
Does. It does, totally. But this is not the Roswell slides, because there's more to this than just a picture or two.
Right. Exactly.
A lot more evidence. Yeah.
And here's the thing too, and this is just the nature of our current like clickbaity internet world, in that every news organization that featured originally the Amelia Earhart picture, they're like, hey, this picture proves that Amelia Earhart was in 1937 Marshall Islands. Now we know what happened to her. So 2 days before, they're all printing the story. And here's the thing about like every blog and, just reprints the same thing.
Absolutely.
Have you guys noticed that?
Yes.
So annoying.
Like CNN, same thing. USA Today, same thing. How about some new information?
It's like somebody took like the AP wire thing and they're all just making book reports of it.
Right. It really is like all the, like where we get our news now, especially the stuff that's shared on Facebook and Twitter. It's all like reprints of somebody else's original material. And that drives me crazy because like I subscribe to like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different paranormal news sources, 6 or 7 different cinema news sources because I want to hear about like what the movies are coming out. And it's the same story on everyone. Everyone is the same story. And it always links back to the original, and none of it's original reporting. So what happens with this is, what's the headline? The headline isn't just new questions about Amelia Earhart photo. That's not the story. The story is, what kind of stoops are these History Channel people if some blogger can take 30 minutes and debunk it? So this is obviously bullcrap.
Right. So it's weird how, so they started out being preoccupied with the photo and saying, oh, here it is. It's the smoking gun. It's proof. And it isn't proof. I mean, no matter if this blogger is right or not, I mean, even if, yes, maybe it's found in the National Archives. There's it seems to look like Fred Noonan and Amelia Earhart. It's still not definitive. It's not proof, no matter how you slice it. So, but it's just all these news outlets were running to hold out this photo as proof. And then now, as you said, Mike, they just turn around the complete other direction and saying, oh, it's all crap. Because some blogger said so, it's crap.
Well, and the thing is, that's where we are. And so I posted something, I'd say earlier this week, about the Amelia Earhart photo on Twitter. And then people responding to it after the whole blogger came out and said it was fake were like, well, this is obviously a fake picture. It has been debunked now, as if this is a settled fact. Okay?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more to the story, and I think we should get to that interview with Richard Spink now, Dick Spink, and talk to him really quick about what he thinks, because he's been working on this for years.
Right, absolutely. And Richard Spink, he actually didn't find the photo, but he works with the researcher Les Kinney, who did find the photo in the National Archives. So that's an interesting point, too. I mean, it was in the National Archives, and it's also in this Japanese media library. So, yeah, we should get to talking to Richard Spink, because he has some thoughts for us about the authenticity of the photo, and also is able, I think, to give some points which might eventually help us debunk the debunker. Can we talk about that photo a little bit? I know you talked about it in the interview, and I don't want to talk too much about that because I think the enormity of the evidence besides that really supports your hypothesis, and everybody's really focusing on the picture. But it seems like something weird is going on.
The only thing weird about that photograph is that some Japanese blogger came up with it with that same photograph in a scrapbook.
Right.
And it's a loosely held together scrapbook, held together by string. And there's other photographs in there that are not, that are post 1935. Some of the dates in there are on photographs are from 1935. That's not a question, but our photograph is not stamped 1935. That dock that they're sitting on in that photograph did not exist in 1935. And I've got a letter from Robert Reimers that says that. He was the one that delivered material to that.
Right. And it's really taking precedence, which is a shame because, my point is you had so much other evidence that was so compelling.
That's right.
And now the only thing anybody wants to fight about now is the picture, which is really dumb. Because who cares?
Everybody wants their 5 minutes of fame.
Right. Who cares about a stupid picture? What about all the other documentation? What about all the eyewitness reports? That's what I'm saying. So,
that's right.
But it is
the
important.
media wants to just prolong this, this and make it a scandal because it sells newspapers. So,
right.
and we're just trying to set the record straight now. So we're working on that right now. I was up until 3 this morning working on some things because it was only 10 o'clock at night in the Marshalls that time. So it just is, it's been a long week.
Absolutely. But the important thing is that, probably more people are talking about Amelia than ever right now. And so we got to keep that going, but get it running in a direction of accuracy.
The woman was an amazing woman. Yeah. She had nerves of steel, and she started the women's movement, and we need to give her all the credit in the world that we can give her.
You got no argument from me.
She wasn't that great of a pilot. Okay. She did crash 11 airplanes, but she was able to walk away from them all.
Yeah.
Was able to walk away from them. So she was good at crash landing them.
Hey, Howard Hughes crashed a lot too.
So, and if she would have spent as much time learning how to navigate properly, use her radios, because she had the latest in radio technology at the time for radio navigation. If she would have spent as much time learning how to navigate properly as she spent promoting that flight, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
So one more thing about the photo then. So Les does say that he did get it from the National Archives. And so the position then is that, yes, it was in the National Archives, labeled in a certain way. But then it was also maybe in this travel log as well. But, as far as dating it, we can't date it with that 1935 date. That's inaccurate.
Yeah, the date is inaccurate.
Right. And and you said that the dock itself was not built until 1936. And,
that's right.
And so where did you get that information about 1936?
That came from the several old people that I know that lived there.
Yeah, so elders.
And that's it. And so what we're trying to do is document that. And the one document that I do have right now, which you can find online, is an interview that was done by Bill Primack. Bill Primack was the head of the Amelia Earhart Society, and Mr. Primack's newsletter in May of 1997. And you can find this online.
Okay.
In the interview, Reimer says, Imidja, that's Jabor Jalyut, was a very secret place, and even my local people had little access to this area. I was one of the few Marshallese allowed in because I delivered construction materials regularly. The Jabber docks were built in 1936, and the seaplane ramps and docks for the naval base at Midij were started about the same time. My shipping records were all taken by the Japanese when the Great War started, but I am sure of the dates I just mentioned. And then he goes on, but that's specifically relating to that. And he escaped and got away with his 2 oldest children at that time. And if he just escaped being beheaded by the Japanese because he was trying to feed his own family, and there was some food that was supposed to go to the Japanese troops that he took to feed his family.
Right. There was a lot of stuff that went on like that in Guam as well. I have some relations in Guam. So questions regarding her capture by the Japanese. Has the Japanany government or anyone connected with the Japanese government ever commented or made any statement regarding this?
They're going to look pretty bad, and they don't want this. This is one of the reasons we believe this Japanese blogger's coming out saying, "Oh no, this is all hogwash," because it's going to really give them a black eye. It's going to give all the people that love FDR a black eye. FDR at the time probably made a pretty good decision. You got to remember, this is 1937. Tensions are high between Japan and the United States. FDR was supporting his base crowd, which was 75% of the population that were isolationists. They didn't want anything to do with another world war. They came out of World War I, and memories were still pretty vivid. So FDR was supporting that base, trying to keep us out of the war. And at that particular time in 1937, Japan's Navy was quite a bit larger than ours. If things could have happened that the American public would have found out that the Japanese are holding America's sweetheart, ticker tape parades, New York, right. I might be speaking Japanese today. And then one other thing to talk about was in 1940, FDR had an election coming up against Wilkie. And, that could have turned the table on him. So it's politics as usual.
Absolutely. The Japanese have never made any statements regarding this, to your knowledge?
They've been asked multiple times. Fred Gorner had one interview on the radio. He went to Japan to try and find that out. And while he was on hold, the captain of the Koshu Maru called in, and they never connected. So many people have been so close for so many years. It's been amazing. And yet we haven't been able to get that smoking gun that we need, that piece of material that's got the serial number on it of her airplane that ended up in Saipan. You look at interviews by Robert Wallach, Thomas Devine, all these Marines that were firsthand witnesses to her in Saipan. I mean, the list goes on and on.
What would be their motivation to lie, really? I mean, because it kind of makes them look bad.
I'll tell you exactly what the motivation to lie is. If you've ever followed Rick Gillespie and
No, I'm saying the Marines. Why would the Marines lie?
They wouldn't. They wouldn't at all. But if you want to take a look at the other people that are creating other stories that are going other ways to profit. I'm in this thing. I'm a school teacher. Okay, I don't have a lot of money to be thrown at this thing.
Me too. I understand.
And it's ridiculous to look at. The last time I counted, I was in at over $50,000, and I'm leaving again Wednesday to go back to Japan.
Right, it's not cheap to fly out there.
I got to be back by the time school starts. So, but some of the other things that are just really upsetting are these people that are just obviously chasing down stories like her dying as a castaway in Nikamaroro. I mean, this is amazing that this man has been able to continually fabricate a story like that. I mean, it's and people continue to go after it. I mean, in the early 1950s, the Coast Guard built a RAN station on that island where Gillespie's looking. So there was dozens of Coast Guardmen that called Gardner Island home. They were often board and hiked all over every inch of that island. Okay, and that island was searched by 3 U.S. open cockpit biplanes. And they flew from 50 feet to 500 feet over that island for 30 minutes. That island's only 400 yards long, and its widest point is 400 yards wide, I meant to say.
Yeah, but very small in any case.
Well, if they were there, they would have heard those noisy planes flying over and run out to the beach and say, "Hey, we're here, we're here." They never saw anything.
So that's why that hypothesis is not viable, you think?
Well, but, he keeps coming up with the same story about once every 3 years, the same story. Oh, a bone he might have found, which ended up being a turtle bone, a freckle cream bottle, shoes. I've been on those islands down there, and there are piles of anything that floats up on the beach. Okay, and, shoes and particles of clothing and then he says they died of starvation. My God, there's coconuts, bananas, there's everything. And the fish, there was an old wreck that was in the lagoon there. And the fish you could catch by hand out of that lagoon. That's what the Coast Guardsmen used to do. And I don't know, that story, it's just amazing that man has got so much traction and the media loves him like they do. But, he's put a really good team of people together, pays them all well to continue to come up and support his hypothesis.
Well, let's talk a little bit about disinformation then, because that to me is maybe part of what's going on here. I don't know. And I know that people think you're crazy if you ever say that the U.S. government lies to us. They're like, oh, you're a crazy person. But we know that governments lie, and we know there are cover-ups, and we know that disinformation is a thing. So could there be some kind of disinformation campaign going on? Maybe that's why that other researcher you mentioned is getting so much traction.
Well, it's been 80 years. Okay. We just passed the 80th anniversary of her disappearance. None of the firsthand people that could be held accountable for anything like this are alive today. So our whole point, and when you go for papers that are still being held top secret, you have to have a specific reason why. And if they were hidden by a presidential directive, then you need a specific reason to go in and go after those. And we have applied for Les is the one that has applied for many, I can't even tell you how many Freedom of Information Act requests. And several of them have been denied, and they don't have to give you a reason why. We have got files that are missing, lots of files that are missing on this specific case. And anyway, Les doesn't have his book together all the way yet, but he's going to be releasing his book, and I think it's going to be probably the most accurate book with a collection of historical data. Mike Campbell's got a great book out there, too, The Truth at Last. You've seen this book, probably.
Oh, no, I haven't. Okay, gonna write that down.
Yeah, Mike Campbell.
Yep.
Mike Campbell, The Truth at Last.
Okay.
He's actually there's one chapter in there about my work. Mike's a good man. He doesn't believe our photo is actually totally correct because he he just doesn't believe in the media in any form telling any truth. And he's just, I haven't been able to really pin Mike down for why he doesn't think this is totally accurate. So,
well, and again, it's just a photo. There's a lot of other evidence. The fact that everybody's panning everything else just because of a photo is just really dumb. Let's just say that. Because the enormity of the evidence really supports what you're saying.
That's right. And Thomas Devine's book, which you've probably seen, which is this book, Eyewitness, okay. Thomas Devine. He is one of the, he was a good friend of Mike Campbell, and Mike has a collection of evidence of a lot of good writers. Mike isn't a pure researcher himself. He basically collects a lot of other information that the researchers have done and puts it down in a book. So it's, I don't know, there's so much compelling evidence that anybody that really researches Amelia Earhart, and I didn't research Amelia, I knew nothing about her 5 years ago. The only reason I got into this at all is because I was traveling on business to the Marshall Islands. I sell aluminum boat kits besides teaching. And I was in the Marshall Islands, and this story was given to me. It was handed to me. I didn't go out looking for it. And so...
And how did that happen? Who did you meet someone, or how did you get involved?
Yeah, I have a man down there by the name of Ramsey Reimers. It happens to be Robert Reimer's youngest son. And he was, looking at my webpage and my aluminum boat kit webpage, aluminumboatkit.com, and he said, got a hold of me. We Skyped and had a couple phone calls. He says, I just want to fly you down here and see what it is we're doing. And so I flew down there, got to meet some really important people, fell in love with the country. The country is absolutely beautiful. And I ended up making several trips back. On about my third trip, I was sitting with Ramsey and Tony DeBroom, and there were some other dignitaries there from Parliament. And I just made the comment when we were talking about the war relics there. I made the comment, didn't Amelia Earhart disappear in this part of the world? And there was an old guy there that was sitting at the table with. They said, yeah, she landed on our island, and my uncle watched her for 2 days. And that's how it started for me.
First of all, let's thank Dick for his time, for coming on the show and talking with us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to get somebody who's so involved in this, who works with the researchers who were involved in the production of the documentary.
Right, and he was featured in the documentary as well. So I know, Mike, when we first started talking about doing this episode, you were questioning me about, why do people even care about what happened to Amelia Earhart after 80 years? I mean, why can't we just all come clean if we knew about this? Let's say we knew about it. So we talked about the photo itself and how perhaps there's a motive there from a Japanese blogger not wanting the Japanese to be implicated in the death of America's sweetheart.
Right.
Okay, so that might be the motivation there.
But that doesn't seem to me like compelling enough, because the thing is, the Japanese were vilified during World War II to such an extent.
Oh, right.
I mean, you can say, okay, they didn't kill Amelia Earhart, but they still did scientific experiments on prisoners of war. You still can't get around that one.
Right. Why would our government hide the fact, especially for this many years?
So we know why the Japanese might hide it. But I think your question is why would the U.S. government hide it? Okay, so what has been alleged in the documentary is that the U.S. government did know that Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan crashed in the Marshall Islands, but that area was off limits to them. This is what is the contention. So how did they know? Apparently, and this is what's alleged again, they knew because they were able to pick up and decode secret transmissions from the Japanese. And they couldn't do anything about Amelia because they knew they were leading up to the war and they had to preserve their ability to derive intelligence. They couldn't, they couldn't let it slide. They couldn't let it slip that they knew how to decode the secret communications of the Japanese because they knew that would be essential to have that knowledge during World War II. So, but Mike, what was your point after I said that?
Because the first thing I thought about, well, if they knew how to decode the Japanese signals, then they must have known about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And if they knew about Pearl Harbor, then now that is a
thickens.
reason. Now that is a reason for disinformation. Because
Absolutely.
You're not going to let out, like, you remember that thing that killed 1,500 U.S. servicemen and led us into the war that killed 500,000 U.S. servicemen? Well, we kind of knew it was coming, and we just didn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
we let it happen.
So that we would have a compelling reason to get into World War II. December 7th, a day that will live in infamy. Maybe in more ways than one.
Well, that's the thing, and they were thinking that FDR knew about Pearl Harbor all the way back to the 1950s.
Right.
There were 6 different inquiries, like even the Senate and the Congress. But you know how reliable those Senate and congressional inquiries can be. The Warren Commission did such a bang-up job on the JFK assassination that they'd always uncover the truth. But that's the thing. And people have alleged that without Pearl Harbor, we wouldn't have gotten to World War II. And, Churchill had been pressuring Roosevelt to get into the war for a long time. And 88% of the American people, including President Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy, did not want to get involved in a European war. Because, why should we worry? You just had millions of people die in World War I. For what? Now, 25 years later, they're going to do it all again? Let them. And so 88% of the American people opposed us getting involved in the Second World War until Pearl Harbor happened.
And so the researchers allege that FDR administration not only knew about it, but provoked the Japanese into the attack.
Right. There's something called the McCullum Memo in 1940. Some people have said that this memo actually was sent to, the president, and some people said that the president never saw it, but it's 8 actions, an 8-action plan that's dedicated to countering the rising Japanese power over East Asia. And it's basically a document on how we can get into the Second World War. And that's provoking Japan to attack the United States and get us involved. And so that memo is what people say is that's the thing that the U.S. government not just knew about Pearl Harbor or knew that we were going to be attacked soon. They kind of wanted it to happen, so now we get involved in the Second World War. And people don't want to think this about Roosevelt because they have this idea of him. They love him because of welfare programs and because of the New Deal and because he kind of is the liberal ideal for a lot of people. And so thinking that he did something as dastardly as getting us involved in World War II on purpose kind of shatters their image of him. But I'm saying this is the ultimate New Deal. World War II got us out of the Great Depression. That, as far as a jobs creation program, wow. World War II was a great, that did the trick. And I don't know, obviously we don't know the truth, but even the author Gore Vidal, I'm looking into it, and even Arthur Gore Vidal, he thinks that FDR knew in advance. He talks about having lunch with Eleanor Roosevelt in 1962, and he flat out asks her, did FDR know about Pearl Harbor? And she says, no, the plan was for the Japanese to attack our base in the Philippines instead.
Wow.
What?
Well, that's
come from Eleanor, says the plan was to attack our base. So they knew something was coming. And when you talk about disinformation, well, in 2011, it comes out that there's another memo that came to the White House 3 days before the attack on Pearl Harbor that talks about, Pearl Harbor as one of the points of attack that's absolutely coming with the Japanese. And so there's this other 26-page memo warning that an attack is imminent. And, well, we didn't do anything about it. And 3 days later, Pearl Harbor, a day after that, we declare war on Japan, which means we declare war on their allies in Germany. And then that's it. We're in the war. And so what comes out of that? Well, of course, NPR has an article, December 6, 2016. No, FDR did not know the Japanese were going to bomb Pearl Harbor. And it uses its evidence as a Roosevelt biographer saying that there's no way Roosevelt would have gone for that, and the reasons why FDR didn't know about that. But it's just as he said, she said.
Yeah.
As the other side of it. And here's the other thing that to me convinced me about this. And I know I'm getting into it, but I've been reading about this for the past couple of days, and I always thought that the idea that FDR or the White House knew about Pearl Harbor before, I always thought that was ridiculous. You know, kind of like when somebody says 9/11 was an inside job, man, you're like, that person's crazy, right? You just kind of dismiss them. And that's how I felt about this until I was looking into this. And even Edward R. Murrow, you know, who is considered the father of like modern journalism, Edward R. Murrow, he talks about, he had a meeting with Roosevelt the day of Pearl Harbor. Like, he actually was meeting with the president like when it happened. And he said, you know, if I ever write that story, it could pay for my kids to go to college. And so he was implying that there was a whole bunch to Pearl Harbor that we didn't know about. And then then he died. Not mysteriously, he died of cancer. I mean, you could see him. He's smoking cigarette after cigarette, and every time he was on the news, he's got a Marlboro Red in his mouth. So it's like he was
like worse smoker than Rod Serling.
Yeah, totally wasn't worse smoker. You know, so that the fact that he got it's no surprise. The fact that Edward R. Murrow died of lung cancer. I mean, that's the thing. So all these people are saying, well, there's more to it than this. So why would it be in the best interests of anybody in power to say that, no, Amelia Earhart, we had no idea. She was not captured by the Japanese. We definitely didn't know about it. We definitely didn't decode the Japanese code. It's because it would imply our culpability in the deaths of all those servicemen at Pearl Harbor.
Right, because if you lied about Amelia because you didn't want to compromise your intelligence, I mean, what else are you going to lie about? And if you have that power to intercept those messages, you would have had the power to know that Pearl Harbor was going to happen. You were going to have that foreknowledge. And there's books about it, too, written by people that served, like the book by Robert Stinnett, who was a veteran of World War II and a hero of World War II. And he wrote a book called Day of Deceit, The Truth About FDR and Pearl Harbor. So these things are hard to face, but here's the thing. We know that governments lie. We know the machinations of power are really, really a difficult thing, let's just say. I mean,
we watch Game of Thrones, we understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I wouldn't want to be the president because of all the responsibility that you shoulder. But, we have to know that the government is not always telling us the truth. And this has been demonstrated time and time again in different countries, in our country, that governments do this. But
okay, right? Alex Jones.
No, but I'm just saying, but that is the thing. That's what I'm referring to now, that marginalization. I am not Alex Jones. I'm just saying, I'm not even saying this hypothesis about Amelia Earhart and that hypothesis from this latest documentary is valid. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we need to have the freedom to question and to say, well, we know governments lie. Mm-hmm. So they could have lied in this case. We don't know that, but we have to be open to the possibility without somebody saying you're a conspiracy crazy because you don't toe the party line. You don't you're not just sucking up whatever status quo message they're sending your way. Oh, no, you're using critical thinking and questioning it? Well, then you must be crazy. Especially in this era of alternative facts. We have to be vigilant in the media messages that we are consuming. And we need to think about those messages. So this is a perfect test case, and we can't let it escape. The idea that it's news to see this picture put out as proof And, rather than the enormity of the evidence that was really presented, that's what we should be concerned with. So the fact that just one single photo is commanding so much attention is really bringing light to the fact that we are not using our minds. We are not critically thinking. We're just taking whatever the media is spitting out at us. So 1 week they think it's valid. The next week somebody says it's fake. And are we really analyzing that? Is anybody saying, hey, Les Kinney, where exactly did you find that in the National Archives? And then going and interviewing that Japanese blogger and showing us what the whole travelogue looks like in its physical form? Or thinking about, well, how vulnerable is that website where that picture was found? Could that have been inserted? We don't know is the point.
Well, all they had to do was put the date to 1935. All they had to do was change the description. It doesn't say 1935 in the actual picture. It's not like she's holding up a newspaper that says, December 8th, 1935. Hey, check this out, everybody. All it is a description. So, that could have been changed. And that is a reach to say that, somebody would change the date of the photo in the Japanese archive, to discredit it. But the fact is that this one particular thing being discredited is now the whole story instead of the rest of it, the eyewitness testimony and the transmissions and the declassified documents where somebody says Earhart, prisoner of the Japanese, like a U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence document that says that, leads me to believe that there's someone that, for whatever reason, doesn't want us to think that Amelia Earhart was captured by the Japanese. And we talked about this a little bit with Jeff Belanger because we talked about the conspiracy theory behind that nobody was killed at Sandy Hook, right? That people didn't actually, the kids didn't actually die.
Yeah.
And, and I know people who really believe that nobody died in Sandy Hook and that it was all just a gun control, that they did this so that all of a sudden the public opinion would turn to be for gun control because it's part of the New World Order or whatever, that we don't have guns and can't defend ourselves. All right, here's the problem with that conspiracy theory is that nothing happened. Like no gun laws were made, no gun control happened. So if you say that it's a conspiracy theory, in the end, something actually has to change in order for it to be successful. But after any of these shootings, none of our gun control laws have changed. We have to worry about it. But what happened after Pearl Harbor is that we did go to war. So to me, if this was a conspiracy, it totally worked. We got into World War II and people signed up for it. Our uncle lied about his age so he could go fight sooner. 16 years old, he signed, hell yeah, I'm going to war. And people did die. So that's the thing to me, makes it a little more believable to give disinformation about it, because unlike these other conspiracies where there's no discernible outcome, here's a very discernible outcome that happened that ended up also with the explosion of atomic bombs over Japan.
Right. And my question is, are they leading us in certain ways? We know that they want to lead us in certain ways. And right now I'm thinking of that movie Wag the Dog. About,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember that one? About the ways that we are deceived or the ways that we are routed to approving certain things. It is supposed to be a government for the people, by the people. And is it? Our we don't have a dictatorship, but is the media kind of this tool that is cattle prodding us along? That's something that we need to think about.
Right. And also is the fact that most of our media sources are owned by 6 different companies.
Right.
That really, I hate to sound like an Alex Jones kind of conspiracy theorist, but when all the media sources are owned by 6 different companies, they're not going to let any of their media sources come out that's going to be damaging to their companies. And that can be, the thing is they have lobbying arms, they have connections inside the government, and then people, they may not even have bad intentions, but people do each other favors all the time.
Right. And we know this. We know how business works. We know how politics works. We even know, like in the ways that we move in the world, that we do conspire with people. That just means planning. That's not, there's nothing evil in itself about trying to work with people to get things done. It's just that I think as a populace, we need to realize that those things are going on behind the scenes. And it's not any kind of big Alex Jones kind of thing. It's just the way of the world. And we need to look at these things more clearly and question. Always question reality. Question this podcast. I mean, that's okay too. We're not telling you to believe anything in particular. We're just telling you, hey, think about it. And don't fall for the old bait and switch. I mean, don't fall for somebody saying, hey, look at this over here. Oh, no. Now look at this over here. You know what? You need to stop and you need to think before you're distracted by the media.
And you can question us, and you can even ask us questions on Twitter at Other Side Talk.
That's right. That's a great place to question the podcast, is at Other Side Talk on Twitter. But I think what we really want people to do is to see the lizards for who they really are.
Oh, now we're going to the David Icke territory.
But the reptilians are kind of...
We never met a conspiracy we didn't like. Well, I mean, we don't believe it, but it sure is entertaining.
Well, I tell you what, though. I mean, if you're looking at it from the perspective of the government, or even the perspective of history, if a certain number of people have to die at Pearl Harbor in order for Hitler to be stopped, how many, I think they take the equation of how many lives does it save, And that just goes back into one of those hypotheticals. If you need to sacrifice a certain amount of people so that millions more people can survive, I mean, that's what we used at the end of World War II, isn't it? That's exact.
Chuckery, Mike, chuckery.
That's right. The needs of the many are greater than the needs of the few, or the one, as
right.
Mr. Spock would say. But the thing is, they said that, it estimated 1 million U.S. soldiers could die if we had an attack on the Japanese mainland. If there was a ground-based troops into the Japanese mainland, they predicted 1 million U.S. soldiers would die. So instead, they dropped the bomb, killed, 100,000 people in a clip.
These are horrible decisions that need to be made in politics.
Right.
And, we're not saying anybody's a lizard. We're just saying that, these are difficult decisions.
Except FDR was a lizard. That's why he wore a blanket over his legs. Like they said it was polio. They said it was polio, but it was really just to cover up his tail.
God, Mike, you are offending everybody right now, which you love.
Well, come on.
That's your reason for living.
What FDR's dead. What's he gonna say? The only thing, But the fact is, he probably wasn't a lizard. It was Eleanor that was the lizard. You could, right.
You can see it in your eyes. The fact is that, these are all people. We're all people. I don't think that these politicians are in league with Satan or anything like that. But I do think, the devil is in the details. When you have to do that bean counting from hell, you have to make those decisions based on the evils of, what's economically better or what's better in terms of accounting, how many lines in this column and how many lives in this column and how many lives in this column. I mean, it's tough stuff that you have to deal with in politics.
If you don't think...
hopefully everybody who's in office is taking that seriously.
If you don't think that politicians are in league with Satan, you've obviously never had to buy a health insurance from one of the exchanges. So...
Oh, man.
We're touching on so many political live wires today.
That's right. We keep on, and we intend to electrocute all of those live wires. Either way,
we want to poke that bear as
we
much
certainly
as
do.
possible.
We want to thank Dick Spink for joining us and sharing some of his research with us. And also, we want to challenge you guys to use your brains when you're listening to this. So just because Gizmodo one day tells you that Amelia Earhart was captured by the Japanese and the next week tells you that nope, she wasn't captured by the Japanese, read both stories and try to pay attention for yourself, and don't just follow the narrative that they tell you to follow, because usually there's a reason they tell you to follow it. And sometimes it's benign as we just want you to buy our products, and sometimes they want to make you believe things that aren't true to save their own hides.
Right. So consider all the evidence before you make your determination. That's all we're saying here. And if that sounds crazy, well, I think we're living in a crazy world.
Absolutely. But we started this podcast by talking about somebody who was an inspiration to people because she was a pioneer in aviation, and she was supposed to be the first person to circumnavigate the globe in her plane with her trusty navigator, Tom Noonan.
No,
I know.
Noonan.
But the thing is, she was inspiring. And, Either way, I think the song this week represents the fact that Amelia Earhart was the kind of person who liked to make decisions for herself. And that was what this week's song is about. It's called The Way I Fall.
Always end up letting me down.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
And here's what we wish the disinformation people would tell you. You're supposed to go to OthersidePodcast.com/donate. That's the one thing that I like. If they were actually
The one truth.
right. The conspiracy theory that we truly believe in is our Patreon. So you can check that out, OthersidePodcast.com/donate. And you can join us in one of our fun hangouts where we talk about this stuff like live on Google.
Yes, coming up last week of the month. And we want to send a special shout out to our Patreon, Ned.
Dr. Ned is at the level where he gets a mention every single week. So thank you, Dr. Ned, for your support. Thank you to all of our wonderful Patreons for support. And we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.
I was going to say, we're really cooking here, guys. I was going to say, did you say old or did you say bold?